$1.2 million. That is the number John sees when he opens his retirement account. He is 52 years old, an engineer, and by every visible measure, he has won. He maxed out his 401k for 22 straight years. He never missed a contribution. He never panic sold. And on his statement, it says $1.2 million. John believes that number is his. He is wrong, because John does not understand taxes. And the number he actually gets to keep is nowhere near $1.2 million. Here is what nobody told John. That entire balance sits inside a traditional 401k. Every dollar in it is pre-tax, which means John has a silent partner. The IRS owns a slice of that account, and John has never once calculated how big that slice is. When he starts pulling money out, every withdrawal counts as ordinary income, taxed at his rate in his bracket in the year he takes it. That $1.2 million is not a bank balance. It is a bill that has not come due yet. Most people think retirement is a savings problem. Save enough and you are safe. But taxes are quietly the single largest expense many retirees ever face. Larger than housing, larger than healthcare, and unlike those, taxes are almost entirely optional if you plan early. Here is what the data shows. The difference between a smart tax plan and no tax plan can be hundreds of thousands of dollars on the exact same savings, same job, same contributions, same market returns, a completely different retirement. So let's keep this fair. This is not about earning more or saving more. Everyone in this story saves the same amount. We are only changing one thing, how they think about taxes. And by the end, you will see why the person with the biggest account balance is not the person with the richest retirement. The tax code rewards knowledge, not effort. And almost nobody is paying attention. Meet 4 people, all 52 years old, all earning roughly the same income. John, the engineer, put everything into his traditional 401k. Carla, 32 and thinking ahead, spread her money across 3 different tax buckets on purpose. Diana went all in on a Roth, and Maya kept most of her savings in a regular brokerage account. 4 savers, 4 strategies, 1 tax code that treats each of them completely differently. Let's put real numbers on each of them, because that is where it gets interesting. Each of the 4 saved about $30,000 a year for 22 years. Each earned the same market return. Each ended up with roughly the same pre-tax pile. A little over $1 million. On a spreadsheet, they look identical. 4 people, 4 nearly equal balances, 1 finish line. But the tax code is about to split them apart, and none of them can see it yet. The gap will not appear until the withdrawals begin. Before we run the numbers, understand why this matters so much right now. For most working people, taxes are the single biggest line item of their entire life. Bigger than the house, bigger than the cars, bigger than college. Over a career, an average earner can hand more than $1 million to the government. And yet, almost no one plans for taxes the way they plan for a mortgage. They accept whatever the tax code takes, as if it were the weather. It is not the weather. It is a set of rules you can learn. John's logic felt smart at the time. Every dollar he put into his traditional 401k lowered his taxable income that year. In the 24% bracket, a $23,000 contribution saved him around $5,500 in taxes annually. That felt like free money. And for 22 years, it was a real, visible benefit. He watched his tax bill shrink every April. What he never did was ask the obvious follow-up question. If I skip the tax now, when exactly do I pay it? Because the IRS did not forgive that tax. It only postponed it. This is the tax deferral illusion, and almost everyone falls for it. A traditional 401k does not eliminate your taxes. It defers them. You are borrowing against your future self. And the terrifying part is this. You have no idea what tax rates will be in 30 years. John locked in an unknown future liability to get a known present discount. He treated a loan like a gift. Run the numbers, and that gift gets very expensive. Let's talk about how much John was actually allowed to shelter, because the numbers are real. In 2026, the 401k contribution limit is $23,500 for anyone under 50. Once John turned 50, he could add an $8,000 catch-up on top. And there is a special rule most people miss. Between ages 60 and 63, the catch-up jumps to $11,250. So a 50-year-old like John can now shelter $31,500 a year. That is a lot of money flowing into a single tax bucket. Here is a detail that quietly reshapes everything. John's employer offered a match. And no matter which type of 401k John chose, that match always lands in the traditional pre-tax side. Always. Even people who deliberately pick a Roth 401k end up with a pre-tax bucket they never asked. 4. So John's account was tilted toward tax-deferred from the very first paycheck. He thought he was making one clean choice. The system had already made part of the choice for him. There is a timing argument hiding underneath all of this, and it favors acting now. By historical standards, today's tax rates are actually low. The top rate has been above 90% in living memory. The national debt is enormous and still climbing. Ask yourself honestly, do you believe tax rates 30 years from now will be lower than they are today? If you think rates are more likely to rise, then paying tax now at today's known rates starts to look like a bargain. John bet the opposite, without ever realizing he was placing a bet. Now here's the first thing most people get completely wrong about taxes. They confuse their tax bracket with their tax rate. John thinks he is in the 24% bracket, so he assumes all his money is taxed at 24%. That is not how it works. The United States uses a progressive system with 7 brackets. 10%, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37%. In 2026, those rates are locked in. Only the dollars inside each bracket get taxed at that bracket's rate. Let me show you the difference, because it matters enormously. Your marginal rate is the tax on your next dollar. Your effective rate is the tax on your whole income. Someone earning $100,000 might be in the 22% bracket at the margin, but their effective rate, blended across all the brackets, might only be 14%. This gap is the single most misunderstood idea in personal finance, and it is the exact gap that smart retirees exploit to pay less. There is one more layer stacked on top, and it is free money the government hands everyone. It is called the standard deduction. In 2026, a single filer subtracts $16,100 off the top before any tax applies. A married couple subtracts $32,200. That slice of income is taxed at 0%, so a retiree can pull tens of thousands from a traditional account, cover it with the standard deduction and the low brackets, and pay almost nothing. But only if that retiree planned for it. John never did. Here is why that gap is a weapon. In retirement, you often control your own income. You decide how much to withdraw, which means you decide which brackets to fill. A retiree can pull just enough from a traditional account to fill up the 10 and 12% brackets, and not a dollar more. They pay tax at rock-bottom rates on purpose. But John cannot do this cleanly. Almost all of his money is in one bucket, so his withdrawals stack up fast, and they push him into higher brackets whether he likes it or not. Which brings us to the concept that changes everything, the 3 tax buckets. Bucket 1 is taxable, like a regular brokerage account. Bucket 2 is tax-deferred, like a traditional 401k or IRA. Bucket 3 is tax-free, like a Roth. Each bucket is taxed at a completely different moment. And the wealthiest retirees are not the ones with the most money. They are the ones with money spread across all 3, so they can choose where each dollar comes from. Carla understood this at 32, which is why her retirement will look so different from John's. She did not pour everything into one bucket. She split her savings deliberately. Some pre-tax for the immediate deduction, some Roth for tax-free growth, and some in a taxable brokerage for flexibility. People called it overcomplicated. It was not. She was buying herself options for a future where tax rates are unknown. Options are the entire game. Here is what nobody tells you about the tax-free bucket. A Roth is not just about avoiding tax on withdrawals. It is about controlling your income line in retirement. Every dollar Carla pulls from her Roth is invisible to the IRS. It does not count as income. It does not push her into a higher bracket. It does not trigger a single one of the hidden taxes we are about to discuss. Roth money is quiet money, and quiet money is exactly what you want when the tax traps start firing. Diana, who went all in on the Roth, feels great about this so far, and in many ways she should. Her entire balance is tax-free. No surprise bills, no silent IRS partner, but Diana made her own subtle mistake. And it is the opposite of John's. She paid every single tax dollar up front, at her top marginal rate during her highest earning years. She never used the deduction to fill her lower brackets. Perfect tax-free growth, purchased at the worst possible price. Even the right bucket can be filled at the wrong time. Maya took a different path entirely, keeping most of her money in a regular taxable brokerage account. This gives her incredible flexibility. She can access her money anytime, at any age, with no penalty. But her bucket has a slow leak most people never notice. Every year her funds pay out dividends, and those dividends get taxed even if she reinvests them. Every time she sells, she owes capital gains tax. It is a small drag each year. Over decades, that drag compounds into a serious number, but Maya's taxable bucket hides one genuine superpower nobody talks about. It is called the step-up in basis. If Maya never sells and instead passes those investments to her kids, the tax basis resets to the value on the day she dies. All those decades of gains, the ones that would have been taxed if she sold, are simply erased for her heirs. The taxable bucket, so leaky during her life, becomes the most tax-efficient thing she can leave behind. Every bucket has a hidden edge if you know when to use it. There is one more account John completely overlooked, and it is the most tax-advantaged one in existence. It is the health savings account, or HSA. Money goes in tax-free. It grows tax-free, and if you spend it on medical costs, it comes out tax-free. That is 3 tax breaks in a single account, something no 401k or Roth can match. In retirement, healthcare becomes one of the largest expenses anyone faces. An HSA lets you pay for it with money the IRS never touches. John funded it for 1 year, then forgot it existed. Now here is where taxes get genuinely sneaky, and it is all about how long you hold. If Maya sells an investment she has owned for less than a year, that is a short-term capital gain. It is taxed as ordinary income at rates up to 37%. But if she holds that exact same investment for just 1 day past a year, it becomes a long-term gain. Now it is taxed at 0, 15, or 20%. Same stock, same profit. A radically different tax bill decided entirely by the calendar. Most people trade like the calendar does not exist. They sell a winner after 10 months and hand the IRS ordinary income rates for no reason. Holding 8 more weeks could have cut that tax bill nearly in half. This is the kind of invisible mistake that never shows up on a statement. You do not see the money you lost. You only see the money you kept. And the gap between those two numbers is where taxes quietly live. Maya did learn one trick that partly plugged her leak. It is called tax loss harvesting. In any year where some of her investments dropped, she sold the losers on purpose. Those losses offset her gains dollar for dollar. And she could even use up to $3,000 of extra losses to reduce her ordinary income. Then she reinvested in something similar and stayed in the market. She turned a down year into a tax discount. It is a small move, but repeated over decades, it quietly claws back thousands the IRS would have taken. There is one place where this drag simply disappears, and John actually had it right here. Inside a 401k, a traditional IRA, or a Roth, you can buy and sell all you want. No capital gains tax, no dividend tax. Nothing is triggered until you withdraw, if ever. This is why tax-advantaged accounts are so powerful for growth. The money compounds without the annual leak. For 30 years, John's money grew completely untaxed inside the account. The problem was never the growth, the problem is the exit. Because here is the exit John never planned for. At age 73, the IRS forces him to start withdrawing. They are called required minimum distributions, or RMDs. The government waited 30 years to collect its share. And now it wants the money. John does not get to choose whether to withdraw. He does not get to choose whether to pay the tax. The IRS calculates a mandatory amount based on his balance, and he takes it, whether he needs the income or not. And this is where John's giant balance becomes a giant problem. His $1.2 million, growing for another 20 years, could easily become $2.5 million by 73. His first RMD alone could be roughly $100,000. All of it taxed as ordinary income, in a single year. John spent his whole life trying to build the biggest number possible. He never realized that a bigger pre-tax balance simply means a bigger forced tax bill later. The trap was the strategy itself. Here is what nobody tells you about that forced income. It does not just get taxed on its own. It stacks on top of everything else, and it drags other things into the tax net with it. This is the mechanism that catches millions of retirees completely off guard. They think they will be in a low bracket in retirement. Then the RMDs hit, and they discover they are in a higher bracket than they were while working. The reward for saving well became a penalty. Now let me introduce the trap that has an actual nickname among advisors. They call it the tax torpedo, and it targets your Social Security. Most people assume Social Security is tax-free. For many, it is. But whether it gets taxed depends on a formula called provisional income. And that formula counts your RMDs, your withdrawals, your interest, and even half of your Social Security itself. The more you pull from John's traditional account, the more of this formula fills up. Here is how the torpedo actually fires. Once John's provisional income crosses $34,000 as a single filer, up to 85% of his Social Security becomes taxable. So every extra dollar he pulls from his 401k does 2 things at once. It gets taxed itself, and it drags up to 85 cents of previously tax-free Social Security into the taxable column. With it, effectively, $2 get taxed for every $1 he withdraws. His real marginal rate spikes far above the number on the bracket chart. And here is the detail that should make everyone furious. Those provisional income thresholds were set in 1983. The 85% tier was added in 1993, and Congress has never once adjusted them for inflation. $34,000 in 1983 was a comfortable income. Today, it is barely above the poverty line for some households, which means a trap originally built for the wealthy is now quietly swallowing ordinary middle-class retirees. More of them every single year. The torpedo was never repealed. It just keeps drifting downward. Let me make the torpedo painfully concrete, because a name is not a number. Imagine John needs an extra $10,000 one year to fix his roof. He pulls it from his 401k. On paper, $10,000 in the 22% bracket should cost $2,200 in tax. But that withdrawal also drags $8,500 of his Social Security into taxable income. So he is now taxed on $18,500, not $10,000. His real cost is not 22%. It is closer to 40%. The roof cost him far more than the roof. The hits do not stop at Social Security. There is another one waiting called IRMA. It is a surcharge on your Medicare premiums based on your income. In 2026, once a single filer's income crosses $109,000, their Medicare Part B and Part D premiums jump. For couples, that threshold is $218,000. John's large RMDs could easily push him over that line. So his forced withdrawal does not just raise his income tax, it raises his healthcare costs too, for the rest of his life. Now here is the trap almost no married couple sees coming. Financial planners call it the widow's penalty. Right now, John and his wife file jointly, with wide brackets and a big standard deduction. But one day, one of them will pass first. The survivor keeps almost the same income, from the same RMDs and Social Security, except now they file as a single person. The brackets compress. The standard deduction shrinks by half. The very same income suddenly gets taxed far harder. In the hardest year of someone's life, grief and a tax hike arrive together. There is also a lever John never considered, and it is geographic. State income taxes stack right on top of the federal ones. John lives in a high-tax state. If he pulls $100,000 from his 401k there, the state takes its own cut on top of the IRS. But a retiree who relocates to Florida, Texas, or Nevada pays zero state income tax on those same withdrawals. Where you live when the tax comes due can be worth tens of thousands of dollars a year. Same account, same withdrawal, a different map. Let's add it all up for John, because this is the full picture nobody showed him at 52. His RMDs push him into a higher bracket. Those same RMDs trigger the tax torpedo on his Social Security. And they push him over the IRMA line, raising his Medicare premiums. 3 separate taxes, all firing at once, all triggered by the exact same forced withdrawal. John did nothing wrong by the old rules. He saved diligently. He just never learned that where you save matters as much as how much. Now compare that to Carla, who spread her money across all 3 buckets on purpose. When RMD season arrives, Carla has options John will never have. She takes just enough from her traditional account to fill the low brackets. Then she covers the rest of her spending from her Roth, which is invisible to every one of those formulas. Her provisional income stays low. Her Social Security stays untaxed. Her Medicare premiums stay flat, same savings as John, a fraction of the tax bill. That is the power of buckets. So is there a way out for someone like John, who is already deep in one bucket? There is, and it is the single most powerful tool in retirement tax planning. It is called a Roth conversion. Between roughly age 60 and 72, there is a golden window. His paycheck has stopped, so his income is temporarily low, but his RMDs have not started yet, and neither has Social Security. In that quiet window, his tax brackets are wide open and mostly empty. Here is the move inside that window. Each year, John voluntarily moves money from his traditional account into a Roth. He pays tax on the conversion now, deliberately, at today's low bracket. It feels strange to volunteer for a tax bill, but every dollar he converts is a dollar that will never be an RMD. It permanently shrinks his future forced withdrawals. It lowers the RMDs, defuses the tax torpedo, and keeps him under the IRMA line, all at once. He is trading a small controlled tax today for a massive, uncontrolled one later. Let me make this concrete, because the numbers are the whole point. Say John retires at 60 with $2 million in his traditional account. For 12 years, he converts about $80,000 annually into his Roth. He deliberately fills the 12% and 22% brackets and stops. He pays a modest, known tax each year. By 73, he has moved roughly $1 million into the tax-free bucket. His remaining traditional balance is now half the size. His RMDs are half the size, and the tax torpedo, which needed a big forced withdrawal to fire, no longer has enough fuel. He defused the bomb one controlled year at a time. Compare that to John doing nothing. That same 2 million grows untouched to well over 3 million by 73. His first RMD is enormous. It slams him into the 32% bracket, taxes his Social Security, and triggers the IRMA surcharge, all in 1 year, every year after. The identical starting balance produces two completely different tax outcomes. The only variable that changed was whether John acted during that quiet window. The window closes whether or not you use it. One warning on the Roth. Because timing matters here too, Roth money has a 5-year rule. Each conversion needs to season for 5 years before the converted amount can be touched penalty-free, if you are under 59.5. So this is not a lever you pull at the last second. It rewards the person who starts early and stretches conversions across many quiet years. The people who wait until 70 to think about taxes have already missed the cheapest window. Time is the one ingredient you cannot buy back later. Carla had one more quiet advantage most people never consider. For part of her taxable savings, she used municipal bonds. The interest from those bonds is exempt from federal income tax and often from state tax too, if she buys her own state's bonds, so a slice of her income each year simply does not count. It does not raise her bracket, it does not feed the provisional income formula. It is one more way she keeps her taxable income line low, on purpose, while John's keeps climbing on autopilot. This is the difference between reacting and planning. John, left alone, will pay taxes on the IRS's schedule, in the IRS's brackets, at whatever rates exist in the future. But John, with a plan, pays taxes on his own schedule. In brackets he chooses, at rates he can see today. The money is the same. The control is everything. Taxes are not a fixed cost you accept. They are a variable cost you manage. Most people never learned they had the steering wheel the whole time. There is one more tool worth knowing, especially if you are charitable. It is called a qualified charitable distribution. Once John is subject to RMDs, he can send money directly from his IRA to a charity. That gift satisfies his required withdrawal. But it never counts as income. It never touches his provisional income. It never fires the torpedo. For anyone who gives to charity anyway, this quietly converts a taxable event into a tax-free one. The tax code is full of these doors. Almost nobody knows to open them. So here is the counterintuitive truth at the center of all of this. The biggest tax mistake is not paying too much tax in any single year. The biggest mistake is putting all your money in one tax bucket and building a tax time bomb you cannot defuse later. John did not have a savings problem. He had a concentration problem. Every dollar sat in the one bucket the IRS controls the most. He optimized for the balance when he should have optimized for the flexibility. Let me say the line that matters most. Diversification is not just for your investments. It is for your taxes. You already know not to put all your money in one stock. Almost nobody realizes the same rule applies to tax buckets. Spread across taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free, and you buy yourself the one thing money cannot otherwise get you in retirement. Control over your own income line. And control is what separates a rich retirement from a stressful one. Think about what actually happened here. John and Carla saved the same amount, over the same years, in the same market. On paper, John's balance is even bigger. But Carla will keep far more of hers because she understood one thing John did not. It is not what you earn. It is not even what you save. It is what you keep after the tax code takes its cut. And the tax code takes a much bigger cut from people who never bothered to learn how it works. The wealthy have always known this. They do not have secret investments you cannot access. They have tax knowledge you were never taught. Roth conversions, bracket management, buckets, timing. These are not loopholes. They are written plainly in the code, available to anyone who reads them. The only real divide is between the people who learn the rules and the people who let the rules happen to them. Taxes are the one expense where knowledge directly becomes money. So the next time someone shows you a big retirement balance, do not ask how much is in the account. Ask which bucket it is in and when the tax comes due. That single question tells you more about their real retirement than the balance ever will. Because $1 million you fully own is worth far more than $2 million the IRS is quietly waiting to tax. The number on the statement was never the real number. If this showed you something about your money you were never taught, subscribe to Desmond Wealth and turn on the notification bell. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day. No hustle culture, no shame. Just the numbers most people never see, explained clearly enough to act on. Because the most expensive thing in retirement is not a bad market. It is a good plan you never made. Learn the tax code or pay it forever. The choice was always yours.